this day in 2014, then Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan signed a controversial Jail the Gays law. To this day, in some African countries, homosexuals are forced to live in the closet to avoid being persecuted and targeted. And in some countries, homosexuality is punishable by death. For more on this, we're joined by Dumisani Dube, editor-in-chief of Exit newspaper, a queer publication. Dumisani, thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon. Please do correct me if I'm wrong, but at last check, there were countries that were deemed quite dangerous to be gay on the continent, including Uganda, Nigeria, Egypt, Tanzania, and Sudan, that we're still negotiating tolerance in 2022. Tells us what?
Hi, Dudu, correct. Thank you very much for having me. Yes, those are correct statistics, and also Zimbabwe as well can be put in the same basket, because it is not safe for the queer community to be in that country and be out. Africa as a continent is a divided continent, and we don't want to say xenophobia in many instances is the testimony of that. Divided as we are as a continent, the continent comes together to push a homophobic agenda in the laws that were laid by and inscribed by our oppressors through religion. And most of our African leaders have taken it upon themselves to instill and impose these on the African continent. Let's take, for instance, the Sharia law in many Muslim states. And Christianity has also taken their bigger position in instigating violence and discrimination against queer bodies.
There are countries, though, on the continent that do quite well, South Africa being one of those countries. So on paper, where laws are concerned, quite progressive, yet the situation on the ground paints a different picture when we see the intolerance and we see the killing of members of the LGBTQI+ community. It's kind of confusing. What do you perceive is the problem?
The problem is based on that the Constitution is somewhat the best and progressive, and a progressive one in the entire world. But we still face attacks against queer bodies in South Africa. And the gatekeepers of the law have let us down in so many cases. Like, let's take, for instance, in the case of Anele Bengu, who was murdered, in which his perpetrator, Nando Stele, was released recently on bail, despite the proof of DNA results confirming he was the murderer. According to my source, this was his 30th count, including previous cases. The queer community continues to live in fear, and more so, we keep asking ourselves, who is next? So the South African Constitution, yes, it is on paper, it's black and white, but in practicality, it's doing nothing, because we are not protected. There is no protection against violence which is perpetrated against the queer community. So yes, it is still a long way to go, and we hope that one day this will be resolved.
In all of this, what is the role of the media? How do we better report?
The role of the media is to disseminate correct and accurate information. Without the media, we are clueless of what is going on around us. Media has a role to say information without fear nor favor. The place of the media in all this is to amplify, is to be an amplifying source, to speak for the voiceless and make sure that the world is abreast on current issues, and to amplify voices to those who cannot speak for themselves. And we have such voices in Bongani, Shahan, Ditseho, and Mto, who are gracing the Exit cover this month. So the role of the media is that of disseminating information and making sure that these cases or these things are heard, and approaching governments and approaching the perpetrators, and also taking responsibility and asking for responsibility, requesting responsibility from our leaders and all.
Dumisani Dube is editor-in-chief of Exit newspaper, a queer publication. Thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon.